Welcome to the Honest Dog Breeder Podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan, where each week we dive in to discuss all things dog breeding so you can build a breeding business you love, producing dogs that fulfill their owners' dreams. I believe you can have an honest dog breeding program that also pays the bills. So throw those pods in your ears while you're cleaning kennels. I'd love to join you.
Hey, Beth, thanks so much for joining me today. For the people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hi, Julie. Good to be here. My name is Beth Berkobien, and I'm the owner and behavior consultant for Rehab Your Rescue Behavior Services in Dallas, Texas. So I specialize in aggression, reactivity, and separation anxiety. I have a master's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in animal behavior. I'm certified in separation anxiety, and I have over 20 years of experience. I also work for a behavior vet here in Dallas, Texas, seeing her clients a couple days a week. So I'm well-versed in aggression, reactivity, and separation anxiety, and bird dogs, because I happen to have 2 English setters, and I specialize in the bird dogs. So I have several German Shorthair Pointer clients. I support an English setter rescue, and I support a general bird dog rescue that has Vizslas and German Shorthair Pointers and bloodhounds. So I am well versed in the bird dog and their particular challenges.
Yes, I was very lucky to find you.
Yes. It was kismet, Julie.
Yes, exactly. Well, perfect. So tell us a little bit about temperament and drive. This is something that I think, we talk so much about building drive in our breeding dogs, and we want to have that perfect temperament. Where do you see that, and how do you see them interrelated?
Sure. So often temperament, I think, is what the dog generally is, right? If the dog is generally affable, if the dog is aloof, if the dog is, a bouncy, sweet guy, or is he a little more like, I'm going to hang out over here away from everyone else. So I have 2 very different setters in my home right now. I have a 12-year-old retired breeding bitch that came through a rescue, and she is just the sweetest old thing. Like, she is very calm. She loves to snuggle. She loves to be in everybody's lap. She is just a darling temperament. And then I have Sir Edmund, who is everything that I asked for from the breeder. He's absolutely lovely. He is from a very honest, reputable, ethical breeder. He's from Master Hunter Lines. I asked for a dog that had a lot of drive, that had a lot of opinions, that had a lot of personality, that had, the ability to be very forward. And I got everything I asked for and more in spades. So his temperament is lovely. His temperament is very sweet. He can be a little aloof in that he likes to kind of be by himself sometimes, and he'll go off on his own. But he has a very forward temperament, and he's very, makes his feelings known. Like, he has very big feelings about life, but we can't mistake temperament for drive. So often, we can have these really lovely dogs, and then they either have no drive or they have a ton of drive. Edmund does have a ton of drive. He has a ton of bird. He has a ton of go and not a whole lot of whoa. So for him, I had to teach him a lot of how to relax. And I think that, especially with these bird dogs, people just want them to be potatoes in the house, but they want them to be stars in the field. So then they bring them into the house and they get frustrated with them when they're not potatoes. And so Edmund is not a potato of any imagination. And Julie knows him well. She's seen videos. There is videos somewhere on my Instagram of him like box jumping onto my 4-foot high island just because. So even behaviorists have dogs.
He's all personality. With the temperament and the off switch, do you find that more related to drive, or do you find that more related to temperament?
Drive. So we have to turn that drive off, right? We have to be able to, and it's probably a combination of both, in that, does that dog have the ability to have the temperament to turn off? Edmund didn't in the beginning. Edmund is slightly maladaptive, and maladaptive means normal behaviors that have turned slightly abnormal for the general home environment. So he, at 9 weeks, came with a little bit of confinement anxiety, isolation distress, hyperattachment. So he's hyper attached to my husband. So when my husband walks out of the room, he was flipping, like not just like, oh, you walked out of the room, I'm a little upset that you did this, like full on panic attack distress, and not something that was correctable with a punishment. So
Sure.
if
And
I
that kind of, does that kind of look like him just barking and just kind of pacing? And is that what you're seeing for that?
Yeah, so I have a video of him that I can probably send you, and if you want to pop it into the call at some point. So what it looks like is it looks like sheer panic. It looks like a dog who eyes gets wide and immediately turns red sclera. So the whites of his eyes immediately turn red. He immediately starts panting. And so that's a difference from, oh, I'm a happy, relaxed panting, because he has a tight jaw and his tongue stays inside his teeth. So when he's panting, his tongue is staying inside his front teeth and it's scalloping up on the edges. So that's telling me that's a dog that's really overstressed, right? And not only is he doing that, he is frantic pacing, leaping over furniture, running to the gate, knocking the gate down, running down the stairs, hypervocalization, not just woof, 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 where did you go, but screaming, like full on panic screaming. In the beginning, nothing could interrupt that. So nothing could stop that behavior. I could have probably hit him with a baseball bat. Full disclosure, I did not hit him with a baseball bat.
Clarifying.
I don't do it, I promise. And it wouldn't have mattered. So when we're in an emotion like that, we can't correct it, because it's like if you, Julie, right now had a panic attack and I just screamed at you, it wouldn't make it any better. It would make you realize I was unsafe and not a good place to show, not a good person to show that you're having a panic attack or having emotions.
It would actually ruin, it would ruin our relationship, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that your relationship is staying intact when you're working with a dog with these kinds of anxieties.
Sure.
Because correcting them is only going to damage your relationship.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, great. And then, so do you find, so what did you do with Edmund? How did you fix that with him, or adapt it, or what would be the word? Would it be fix?
So we never really fix anything in behavior because there's nothing to be fixed, right? It's just that he's having an emotion. So what I have to do more than anything is I have to change his emotions towards Richard leaving. So what I did is I would set him up for success. So when I knew Richard was starting to leave, I would start playing a game with him. So I would either get him something to destroy so that when he saw Dad leaving, his anxiety level could be channeled into something else. Destroying a box, destroying some paper. If your dog is an adjuster, don't do this, but he's not. He will just shred and then leave.
What?
If your dog is not an ingester.
Ingester. Like
he's going to eat it. Like if he's going to eat cardboard, then don't play this game with him.
Got it.
And I would start with relaxation. So if I would see Richard getting ready to leave, I would start the Really Real Relaxation Game by Susan Clothier. And what I would do is ask him to go to a down position and then feed cookies. He'd see Dad walking around, I'd feed cookies. If I saw his emotions starting to escalate and he chose to get up and leave that position, because sometimes asking a dog to lie down or sit down when they're anxious is like asking you to calm down when you're angry. Right. That never works, right? That's just going to make you madder. So like asking a good old Texas woman to calm down, not going to happen. So we want to let him feel his emotions, but at the same time, we want to change them. So if he did start to have big emotions, I'd let him go to the door, look and see where Dad went, call him back, ask him to do a behavior. So if I can get him to do a differential reinforcer, if I can get him to kind of move through something else, that usually turns their brains on. So if I can get him out of his back brain where he's panicking and into his front brain where he can think, then I can work through that. So I'd ask him to touch, I'd ask him to down. If he got up and ran away from me, fine. And then when he'd come back, I'd ask him to touch, spin, maybe do a high five. See if I could get him back to relaxation, get him back to eating cookies. If a dog is eating cookies, their emotions are changing.
Okay.
Yep. So often people would say, why aren't you reinforcing that behavior? If you're feeding your dog cookies while they're panicking, aren't you reinforcing that behavior?
Yes, I've always wondered that.
Yeah, the short and easy answer is no, because you can't reinforce an emotion. You can only reinforce a behavior. So he's not working out of behavior when he's panicking. He's working out of emotion. So if I feed a cookie in emotion, the emotion is likely to decrease, which thereby means the behavior will change.
How do you know if it does, but how do you know if you're reinforcing a behavior or if you're actually adjusting the emotion? How do you distinguish those?
Right. So what you'll see that emotions start to decrease, and that thereby that behavior starts to decrease.
And so when
that's what I saw with Edmund. So if Edmund was just woof woof barking, and normally most even average pet parents can tell the difference between panic bark and a woof woof bark, right? Yeah. So if he was woof woof barking, no, I would not want to feed that, because that would just reinforce his demand barking. So he'd be like, oh, great, I get cookies when I bark at you. This is awesome. He's not thinking in this time of emotion, oh, I'm getting cookies, I should do this more. He's thinking, oh, I'm getting cookies, this is chilling me out, this feels much better.
Gotcha.
Food often brings down emotion and changes emotion. It's the same with people.
Oh, it totally works for me.
Coffee. Yeah, coffee, wine, chocolate. That's why, like, if we're having a bad day, what's our first go-to? Oh gosh, I could really use a glass of wine and a piece of chocolate, right? Yes, because it soothes our parasympathetic nervous system. It slows us down, and food slows us down. Food slows dogs down. So, great. I'll tell a really quick crazy story. I went into a home the other day with a field English Spaniel. And I walked into the home and the dog was doing okay with the other dog out. I knew the dog had some behavior issues. He's doing fine. He's a little neurotic. He's a little twitchy, as most, Spaniels are, a little twitchy. Yeah. And we put the other dog away, and I went to step into the laundry room with the mom where the dog was, and the dog full on charged me, full display of aggression, teeth bared, ears back, eyes wide, mouth open, like he was coming for me. I launched down a handful of cookies. He stopped and ate cookies, and he was like, oh, okay, I feel better now. And that changed his opinion of me. He stopped. Now, I wasn't going to go pet the dog, because obviously he was still having an emotion towards me, but it stopped him, and he was able to eat food and move away from me. He did do it again about 10 minutes later. He was on leash, did the same thing. Mom was doing something. He all of a sudden noticed I was too close, and I scattered food down again, and he stopped. Now, it's not going to work for every dog that's aggressing, so don't try it unless you're a professional working with one, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. But it does work, and it will change the emotion. And he immediately was like, oh, wow, okay, when bad things happen, good things happen, because it's changing my emotion. And I know that's a lot to digest, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to raise an eyebrow to this, but that's in the classical side. So when we're in there's always two sides. There's operant and there's classical. When we're in classical, we are working with emotions.
That makes sense. And so operant deals more with just behaviors.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like a sit down stay. Yeah.
Sure. And I know this is becoming more well-known in the world now, but could you distinguish where the whole dominance thing kind of goes wrong? I know that this is still out there a lot, and I see it a lot in the breeder world, and it's just an educational piece. So please enlighten us.
Yeah, it really is. So in the early 40s and 50s, I believe, and I believe it was David Mensch who did a study on wolves in captivity. And he took 10 or 15 wolves, put them into captivity. And what he found came from there was a hierarchy arose. And what he determined was an alpha. How we correlated that to humans being alphas over their dogs, I'm not sure. That I don't know, but it's always this wolf alpha pack theory. First of all, dogs are not pack animals. So the very least of that, they're not pack animals. They're just social creatures, and they're sentient beings. So it doesn't matter. And dogs don't live in packs. So even if you saw dogs out in the wild, they don't travel in packs. They may travel in one or twos, maybe threes, but they don't really travel in packs like wolves, where they are family structures with a mom and a dad and aunts and uncles, and then they kick out the youngins when they get to sexual maturity.
So you're saying that is what we see in wolves, but not what we see in domesticated dogs.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
got it.
Yep. And so then in the 1980s, 90s, he replicated his study, but he did it in the wild. And what he found is that he was wrong, and that there is not a hierarchical structure in wolf packs, that it is a family unit, and that there is no one leader, and that the alpha is not fighting to the death and is not kicking everyone's asses, that it is just a family structure. So it's not this alpha theory and dominance theory is very outdated. Yes, there is dominance type characteristics in dogs, but they are not trying to dominate humans. Dominance is not interspecies. So that's one thing we really have to remember, is that a dog is never trying to dominate you. They don't have credit cards, they don't have cars, they don't have jobs, they don't have any way to dominate you. By them standing on their chest is not them trying to dominate you or laying on your bed or asking for affection. That is just simply untrue. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of comments about this, but it is just simply untrue. Dominance is not interspecies. So they're not trying to dominate us, and we don't need to be their alpha. We need to set clear, guidelines and boundaries, especially with young dogs. So while I focus on the positive reinforcement, positive doesn't mean permissive. So just because I reward the behaviors I do want and redirect the behaviors I don't want, it doesn't mean my young English setter pup is running over the top of me, although he leapt on a counter. Because he's just cheeky. As we know with these bird dogs, they're cheeky. They do things like that. So could I have smashed him for doing that? Absolutely. But all he would have learned if I smashed him for jumping on the counter is mom's really unpredictable. And when something happens that she doesn't necessarily like, and I don't know what that criteria is, I get smashed. I'd rather kiss him off the counter, pup, throw some cookies down, and the second he hops down, he gets rewarded for hopping down. He never left on the counter again. So I don't believe that I reinforced that behavior. I would have had to feed him the second he jumped on the counter to reinforce it, in order for him to be like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. Thank you for jumping on the counter.
Yes. If in order for him to pair that jumping down off the counter gets him treats, correct. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So how do you distinguish then, like is it more of a leadership role then that we're playing as opposed to a dominance role? So like if I perceive him challenging me because he's looking at me funny or he's growling at me, what would be the best reaction there? How do we manage them?
Right. So growling is very offensive to humans. Humans hate growling. That is the first thing that most of my clients come to me with, is my dog is growling at me and I want it to stop immediately. This is unacceptable. And I'm like, really? I love growling. I think growling is so important. It's such an important form of communication.
Yeah.
So if Edmund was standing here right now and I reached for him and he growled at me, that's him telling me something, because Edmund can't say to me, Mom, you moved too fast and that scared me. So instead he went, ugh, that scared me. So I would reevaluate, why is he growling? Is there a bone? Okay, so is he resource guarding? Is he protecting that? And what do I do? So in that instance, I would make a kiss, kiss, kiss noise, throw a handful of cookies away, move him away from that object, move him away from what he's guarding, and then pick that object up.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not reinforcing that growl. And even if I am reinforcing that growl, that's fine, because I want him to grow.
Because we would much prefer the growl as opposed to the bite, right?
Yeah. So I can tell the story of Montgomery. When I got him, he was a 2-year-old field-bred English setter. I got him through a rescue. I was their consulting behaviorist at the time, behavior consultant. And he had gone to a foster home. So he had been for a year of his life, in a year and a half of his life, in a South Texas hunting farm. Known to use heavy aversives, e-collars, heavy hands, force fetching, all
Meaning
of it.
he was, and they were using him for like guided hunts. Is that kind of what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he washed because he wasn't taking the e-collar corrections anymore, and so they dumped him. And so he came into rescue. So when he got into the home, he started resource guarding the couch. And he went to an older family. The dad was in his 60s. So the first time he walks toward the couch and Monty growls. So dad grabs him by the collar, takes him to the ground, smacks him. That took exactly 11 tries. And then Monty went, got it. You don't like my growling. So the 12th time when dad reached for his collar, Monty snapped. That took 3 corrections. He did the same thing. To the ground, laid him down and smacked him. So that at the 4th try, Monty lunged. Dad took him to the ground, smacked him. That took 1. The next time was a level 4 bite to the neck. A bite half the depth of more than half the depth of the canine tooth. And you could see a perfect imprint, and it was pretty deep. Wow. Monty escalated appropriately. Monty said, please stop, please stop, please stop. And every step of the way, Monty was corrected, and his warning signal was punished out of him.
Gotcha.
So I took him. Took me 8 months. It took me 8 months to get a growl back on him. And actually his story is in my Instagram. Although I don't call him Monty, I call him Bandit. I changed his name in that. I forgot I changed his name. Anyways, so I got him home, worked through it. I figured out what his triggers were. So his structure was he was not allowed furniture with humans ever. Because as soon as he was the type of dog, as soon as you gave him an inch, he took a mile. So if you let him sit on the couch over there, he'd eke over, and if dad walked by, he'd snap. And because he didn't have a warning system anymore, he'd go charging to put teeth on.
Gotcha.
So when my husband would walk by, every time we gave him an inch, he would just take a mile, and because he had no warning system, we just couldn't do that. So he was allowed on the furniture, but he was only allowed on a couch that no humans were sitting on. He was never fed. He was also food aggressive. He had a myriad of issues. The very first time I always kept cookies on my body whenever, I usually kept high value whenever he was out of his crate or out of his safety pen, because we have big management in place for him. The very first time I walked past the couch, and he growled, I shoved chicken into his face. I was like, yay! And burst into tears because, oh my God, your warning system's coming back. Thank God. This means that I can put you into a home someday with normal people because your warning system is coming back.
Perfect.
Yeah, he was an awesome dog, and he was a perfect example of when we punish that growl, they will learn very quickly that you don't like it, and they should just skip it and go right to putting teeth on. So we really want to honor that growl, and we really want them to do it because it's their way of telling us something's wrong. That hurts. I'm scared. I'm coming after you. Whatever it may be, whatever they're telling you, let's listen. And if they growl, back off. I stop coming forward. So if a dog growls at me, I'm going to stop coming forward. I'm going to take my eye contact away. And if I have cookies, I'm launching it over his shoulder and getting him moving away. Like if they're growling at me, if I'm walking into a house, and your dog stops and freezes and hard stares me and growls at me, I'm going to toss a handful of cookies over his shoulder and get him to move away.
That makes sense. Now, do you find a lot of this is temperament related, or do you think these are mostly environmental things that create these sort of situations?
It can be both. So I've had puppies right from jumping right out of the gate at 10 weeks, showing these maladaptive behaviors of being aggressive. So it can definitely be genetic and be temperament. And then we also see it that it's environmental, that like with Monty, they just punished it out. In an average dog, so say one of your puppy parents buys a puppy. 3 years down the road, the dog is on the bed and just growls at the mom, seemingly no reason. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them to restrict to the floor. Let's just take that away for now. Maybe he's resource guarding. But the next thing I'm going to say is let's rule out some pain and health stuff. Let's get a pain assessment from your vet. Let's make sure that there's nothing going on in that body. Maybe especially with our young bird dogs that are super active, they could tear ACLs, they could tear, CCLs, they could really do damage to their legs and to their backs. So let's rule out pain. and thyroid and tick-borne diseases. Let's rule out health. Often, sudden onset aggression or behavior issues is pain or health related.
Okay.
Yeah, so we always want to rule that out. It can become behavioral if let go too long. I've seen that happen with thyroid, is we have a thyroid condition, we've become a little aggressive, then they've rehearsed it for a very long time, so it's become kind of a rote behavior, and they keep doing it after the thyroid, after it's been resolved, so then we have to do behavior mod plan. But like my Tessa, she's 12, she compressed a disc 4 or 5 months ago, sudden onset aggression at my little dogs. And same thing, I went to the vet, got in his pain assessment. Yep, that's what was going on. Once we got her on the right cocktail of acupuncture and red light therapy and meds, it resolved on its own, and I didn't need to put a behavior plan in place. But if I would have let it go, say for 6 months to a year, I would have had to put a behavior plan in place.
So you would say too that with these behavior issues that are learned, I can hear my kids running around in the background. They are just like, you know, if you have an injury or something, the longer you wait, like you get the cavity and you're like, oh, I don't need to go to the dentist this month. And then 6 months later, now it's like a really big deal. And so the same kind of principle applies with behavior. Like, let's just figure this out right away and be very proactive, because that's actually going to be simpler for everyone, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
Cheaper.
Yeah, a lot cheaper. It's we're gonna be able to resolve it probably much quicker. We're gonna be able to get management in place. We're gonna be able to get the behavior resolved much sooner. They may still have remnants of it. We may still need to manage it, and we may still need to do things just depending, is this genetic? Is this pain and health? But it's just like us. When we don't feel good, we're grumpy. I mean, but we don't give our dogs that kind of agency. We don't say, oh, it's raining today, you're 12 and you grumped at me. Okay, you're not feeling well today. Like, we have a hurricane hitting the coast of Texas. I'm 6 hours away, but it's still changing kind of our barometer. We're kind of overcast. It's all kind of changing. And so my setter last night, my senior girl, was pretty grumpy. And I was like, and then I looked at her and she was panting. Now, she wasn't stressed. It wasn't hot in the house, pain related. Okay, you're doing it. And then she got up to walk and she was walking and I was like, okay, let's give you a little extra pain meds. So we always have to take into consideration, like, you know, my husband's grumpy because his knee hurts and he snapped at me yesterday. I didn't smash him for it and go, knock it off. You know, it's like, oh, are you okay? What can I do for you? Do you need meds?
Yeah.
We give a lot of grace to each other, right? But we give very little grace to our dogs. And the more we start to give our dogs agency, the more we start to give them consent over things. They're not going to take over the world. I mean, if Edmund does, Godspeed, please bring home millions and please pay my bills. But that's just not realistic, right? No. So if we give them the ability to say no, what is that going to change for you as a pet parent?
And where do you so how do you encourage agency? What does that look like? And then, because I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this and be like, I can't just let my dogs just run amok, like, and just do whatever they want to do. And I need them to behave in a certain way. You know, I have people coming over, I have kids, so on and so forth. So what does agency look like? And how do we work with that to eventually get them to do what we'd like them to do?
Sure. Reinforcement. So one of the things that I use, especially with my young dog, is SMART times 50 by Kathy Sadeo. That's see, mark, and reward training times 50. So essentially I take 50 pieces of their kibble or cookie. If they don't want to work for their kibble, then I'm going to go up a little value. Now I know I'm going to get people that say my dog's not food motivated. Yeah, they are, or they'd be dead. I'm like, okay. It's plain and simple. They eat at least once a day. And if now I'm not saying don't starve your dog till they work. That's not who I am as a person or as a behavior consultant. But we have to build food drives sometimes. Like I was telling you about a German short hair pointer that I have in my program. It's gone to two or three trainers, and they just gave up because he wouldn't take food. And I show up my first time and they're like, he's not food motivated, he won't eat. And I was like, okay, well, he's not dead. Yeah. And the owner was like, well, yeah. And I'm like, so he eats? And she's like, well, yeah, twice a day meals. And I'm like, great. So if I come in the morning, I only want you to feed him half his breakfast. If I come in the afternoon and if you feed at 5 o'clock and I'm coming at 6, feed half his dinner. I don't want them ever to be starving. And then I play games and I find what food works for them. I had to start with chicken for him. That was where we had to start. And I had to start easy and slow and just build that food drive and build him wanting to work for food, because food can be made coercive. So I have another English setter in my program who they used food. He was very fear-based. They used food to lure him outside. Well, he hated outside, and outside was very scary for him. So he just went, no, I don't eat cookies anymore. So now we're building food drive again back in him. He wouldn't take steak on a plate if you offered it to him in the beginning.
Oh, wow.
And now he's like, okay, now I can eat, because now you're predictable and you're not forcing me to do things. Now this is fun, and we're playing games around food instead of always being made to work or being starved in order to get the food. That's just my kind of approach, is that we just have to build food drive with these dogs who are not food motivated. So I've gone off on a tangent.
Sure.
So we built food drive. Your dog will eat now, and now we're going to do the SMART times 50. I always want to make sure that if they're doing something we like, we're rewarding it. So if we're walking through the house and the kids are running and the puppy, you kiss, and the puppy stops, feed it. Okay. Because often we go, no, as the puppy's running after something. And then the puppy's like, what the hell? And hits the deck or keeps going, because no is nothing, no is everything, no has no context. So I don't use no, I use a positive interrupter. I use a kiss. And if any of my dogs had heard that, they'd be all running up the stairs, because it's heavily reinforced. So every time I kiss, I give a cookie. Now here's what most people say to me. I can't have cookies in my pocket all day long. Okay, then let's have little jars all around our house. I have 7 or 8 jars. I have a jar I have 2 jars in my bedroom. I have a jar in my bathroom. I have 6 or 7 jars downstairs in my living room. I have 3 jars downstairs in my foyer, because I need to be able to reinforce behaviors. And just like you don't stop getting paid after 6 months. Your boss doesn't go, you know what, Julie, you're doing such a great job that I'm just not going to pay you anymore. How do you feel about that? You'd be like, no, I don't think so. Or your puppy buyers, Julie, this puppy is so nice, I'm just not going to pay you for it.
Right.
No. Right? So, but we as humans don't want to have to feed our dogs all the time. Until learning history is solidified, over 200 repetitions, inside, outside, dogs don't generalize well. So if you taught a sit in your living room, you have to reteach it in your kitchen, you have to reteach it outside, you have to reteach it at the park, because dogs don't generalize. Dogs don't go, oh, I just taught the Pelagian theorem, and now I know it everywhere. They don't generalize. They have to be retaught it in each environment. So I reinforce behaviors I do want. I do a lot of relaxation. So I do a lot of that really real relaxation by Susan Clothier. So if we are having a bad day and puppy's coming off the rails, I'm going to try enrichment first. I'm going to give a duck head, a duck foot, a bully stick, tearing something up, a lick mat, a snuffle mat, something like that. Get the puppy doing something, or the young dog, and then I'm going to reinforce some relaxation. So I tend to have structure with puppy. I have structure. So if he's being wild, I'm going to assess the things. Is he tired, and does he need a nap? So then we're going to do relaxation, because he doesn't confine. So I need to set him up for success to be able to nap free in the house. Is he hungry? Does he need a snack? Does he need something to eat? Does he need a little exercise? Does he need a flirt pole? Does he need a bird wing? Does he need something to do? Does he need to go potty? And if all of those needs are met, then we might just be having a toddler tantrum. I have an adolescent teenager right now. If you think puppy is hard, wait until they're about 10 months old. Everything goes out their little brains. You're going to have a break. So you're going to get your puppy at 8 weeks. From 8 to about 5.5 months, you're going to want to smash it like a bug. That's why they make them so cute. So you can't smash it like a bug. And then you're going to have a break. You're going to have a break from like 6 months to 10 months. And you're going to be like, oh my God, this is the best puppy ever. I love him. He grew up. He's amazing. And in about 10 months, he's going to be like, and you're going to want to smash him like a bug again.
That's about right.
It's very true. It's so true. I haven't raised a puppy in 16 years. It'll be at least another 16.
No, it totally makes sense. It's a lot like raising kids in that sense, you know. I mean, my kids, like they'll become destructive if they don't have somewhere to gauge and to build off of. Like they just have to be engaged. And I think that's what enrichment does so much, is it gives them something to work on that you get to pick, as opposed to, I'm going to figure something out that will entertain me right now. So, do you have any tips for managing that with multiple dogs? There'll be so many breeders. Obviously, we have multiple dogs. What would you suggest?
Yeah, so I have 5. And mine are pretty good about that. If I give Edmund something, they'll just kind of leave him be and won't go mug him for it. But I'll set them up for success. If you have a dog that has resource guarding or food issues, just put them away, you know, and separate them. Usually, my senior setter, Duchess, that I lost last year, she was severely food aggressive and a severe resource guarder. So anything with her, even when she was fed, she'd be fed separately. She'd be fed in a closed, locked room because she got out once and the Chihuahua went flying. So yeah, very careful. We don't like flying Chihuahuas in this house.
No.
So gates, pens, crates. I love crates. Unfortunately, Edmund, I tried for 8 months and he can't crate. So I just don't.
What told you to give up on that?
Because it was stressing him out beyond all belief, and we hadn't slept in 8 months. I could leave him. I got up to 7 minutes of alone time. 7 minutes in 8 months. That's as far as I could get. And I'm a professional and I'm certified separation anxiety. And I called another settings professional in and said, help me. What am I doing wrong? What am I missing? I did a program with her and she finally went, stop. You are driving this dog insane. He would scream every time we could put him in. He'd relax. He'd kind of settle to a hip. We shut that door and he'd scream. And it wasn't a learned behavior. It was simply, it's from the day he came home, he had confinement anxiety. And my understanding is the grand bitch also had confinement anxiety. Of the other 10 puppies, nobody's seeing anything else. Nobody is seeing any maladaptive behaviors. So I was the lucky one that got the
you got the special one. Yeah. That makes sense. And so there is some temperament component to some of those things for sure. So
for sure.
Yes, going back on the temperament and drive, what I've seen just in my own experience, and I know you've helped me with Cinch and stuff before. Cinch is a blue heeler, you know, so cattle dog, he's kind of very different temperament and drive, if you will, more so the drives, than my German short hairs, which are kind of like retards, you know, they're happy-go-lucky, whatever. Can you explain how like the breeds and how that is related, like what we're breeding for, the drives, and how that can lead to maybe like a shorter fuse, and if that's a good thing, if we want that, please.
Yeah, you know, I don't know a whole bunch about breeding, and I won't pretend to. I think that's more your niche, but I know that if you're getting consistently, like I have a client that has a Jack Russell Terrier from a breeder, and she has found that this certain pair throws dogs that are behaviorally challenging. And so she's done 3 litters and she's gotten multiple maladaptive pups out of those 3 litters. And her and I have talked, because I and the behavior consultant on one of the dogs from one of the litters, I talked to the breeder and she was like, I can't breed that pair together anymore. And I'm like, yeah, no, because they're throwing maladaptive puppies. They're throwing puppies that are having behavioral challenges. They're coming out of the chute, resource guarding, stranger danger, really forward, and not forward and like, I'm really brave, really forward and I'm going to put teeth on you if you challenge me too much. And so while I believe that we shouldn't be challenging our puppies, we should be able to do things like pick a puppy up. We should be able to move a puppy around. And if we go to touch a puppy and the puppy is cujoing at us, that's a problem. And if that's happening at 8 to 16 weeks, we have to look at why, because it's not going to be an environment. You know, it's not going to be, well, what did you do? Which is what we often want to do. We often want to blame the parents. When I went and met this puppy, I was like, oh yeah, he's fine. He's a challenge. He's just a tough dog with a ton of forward personality that wants to challenge you and wants to see what you're going to do. Are you going to stand your ground and challenge him back? And if you do, he's coming back at you, because aggression begets aggression 100% of the time. He's coming into 6 months now, and he's coming around nicely. He may never be a dog that you can just walk over and scoop up. But my clients have very reasonable expectations of this dog. So often genetics are a big part of it. You know, those Jack Russells, just like Cinch, they're really tough, drivey dogs that have, you know, they're bred to kill rats. Like, let's just talk about that. They're bred to take down vermin. Cinch is bred to grab a cow by the nose. Like, let's talk about that. That should not, if you don't have an outlet for Cinch to herd, to move, to push, to grab, he's going to go nuts. And I think that's where you and I started, is Julie and I met in a clubhouse room, and she was talking with some different language than that I agree with. So then I asked her if her and I could have a conversation about 10 months ago, and we did. And then she asked me if we could have a conversation about Cinch, because Cinch was being really challenging with her, and she was, you know, and I hope you don't mind me telling you this story.
No, you're fine. I was wrong. I learned though.
Yeah, you know, and it's important, and I've been wrong as well. So it's important when we can say, oh, maybe I'm not doing this right. But it was never getting better. Cinch and her were always clashing. And I was like, well, stop arguing with him. And she was like, what? And she was like, no, he has to listen to me. And I'm like, why? And she's like, well, because I am the alpha. And I'm like, okay, great. How about try this instead? How about back off, toss some cookies, and see if it changes his opinion about you? And it worked.
It did work. It actually bailed us out, because I think the thing that brought the most clarity, because he was growling, and he was actually sitting there under my daughter's bed growling, and I was very afraid. I didn't want to leave her or him in the bedroom. You know, that was too scary for me. And I was in between him and the door. So now I closed him into a corner and just escalated, making things worse. I'm much more educated now. Thank you. But that was really helpful. And the thing that you said to me in like one sentence that like brought so much clarity was, you were like, what if you yelled at Bill like you responded to Cinch? And do you think that that would make him calm down? And I was like, oh, hell no. And he was, okay. Immediately I understood. Yep. I was just escalating. Absolutely.
Yeah. We often do that, and we don't, because we don't want to humanize dogs, which is absolutely fine. But saying our dog is angry is not anthropomorphizing, right?
Explain that.
So
because we want to give human emotions to dogs, and really that's just wrong. Is that what you're saying? Like they don't do emotions the way we do emotions. They're not jealous, you know. Correct. They don't they're not vindictive. They're not trying to get over on you.
Right. They're not sitting in their crate or their pen with a little chalkboard going, Mom did this on Tuesday at 4 p.m. and I'm going to pee in her shoe. Like that's not happening. You know, dogs. So one of my biggest thing is my dog knows better. Does he? Sure. Your dog doesn't know better. And they'll say, no. I came into the house and the garbage was tipped over and the dog was afraid. No, that was just an emotional response to your emotional response coming into the house. So try this. Put your dog outside, scatter shit all over your house, put your dog inside first, then walk in and go, what did you do? And see what the dog does. The dog is going to give you that same guilt response because it's a learned behavior from you.
It's
learned you're unpredictable.
Yes. And I think that's really key, is when you say that, you know, they've learned that we're unpredictable, and because we're unpredictable, they don't react correctly because, or well, as we would think it's correctly, because they don't know what to do. I think I noticed that with Cinch, I have to be more predictable being a cattle dog. And I noticed that with my short hairs, I can be my range of predictability can be a lot wider, and they draw like whatever. They don't really change. Can you explain where that difference is? Like, why is that the cattle dog can't handle my crazy, but my GSPs can?
Well, because that's a herding dog, right? So the herding dog wants to control things. The herding dog wants there to be calm and wants everything to be very predictable. And if it's not, they're going to make it predictable. So that's why if you have kids, they're running around trying to move them in a circle and nipping at their heels, because they're trying to get them to do what they need them to do, which is be predictable and sit down. Like, why are you moving? That's why I don't usually suggest a herding breed like that. And especially a really tough herding breed like the cattle dog. Again, cattle dogs are supposed to grab bulls by the nose. So if you've ever watched a cattle dog work or a border collie work, they will go up over the top of stock and go down into their faces and turn them back. You need a dog with a ton of guts in order to do that. You can't, it's not going to be a fluffy poodle that you can set on your lap and just pet. They need work, they need drive, they need things to do. So it goes back to genetics. A really good book that I love that I don't have up here is Meet Your Dog by Kim Brophey. So, or I think it's Meet Your Dog. Meet Your Dog by Kim Brophey. It's a really great book. It goes into the genetics of what each breed or breed group is. And so if you're looking at getting a hunting dog, you can go and look at the different characteristics of the hunting group. And you can say, is this right for my lifestyle? Pros and cons are listed in this book. She talks about dominance. She talks about alpha theory. She talks about her legs protocol, which is learning, environment, genetics, and sense of self. And she talks about how we can look at those 4 things to really work through our dog and understand them a little bit better. It's a really easy read. It's great for pet parents. But, you know, German Shorthair is bred to be a family dog first and foremost, and then bred to go hunt. So they're bred, they have 2 sides of them. And I know Julie's dogs specifically are bred to be more family and less drive and less go, but plenty of bird. Whereas Edmund, I did not pick the house dog. I picked the dog with a ton of go and a ton of work and a ton of drive. Is that right for my lifestyle? No. I mean, yes, it's right for who I am as a person, but it's not right for the next person that's gonna for their very first English setter. They toss him off a rooftop. They'd be like, they'd return him. They go, I cannot do this. He's neurotic, he's barky, because all the things I love about Edmund, the average pet parent is gonna hate. The average pet parent is gonna say, this is not tolerable.
Sure. So the most success, so when we're looking, because we have to vet buyers all the time to make sure that our buyers are going to be set up for success, we really need to take our drive. And I feel like drive is supported by temperament, just like those cattle dogs. They have to have a stronger constitution, if you will, to manage working with cows. And so that is going to change a little bit of how their temperament manifests just to support that drive, correct? So when we're looking at breeding and picking homes, we really need to find lifestyles that are going to be able to manage the drive in a productive way and not be driven crazy by it. Right? That makes sense.
You know, and a lot of times people look at drive and they're like, oh, this is anxiety. Like, if most people would look at Edmund and go, and I know that's one of the things we want to talk about today, and go, he's an anxious dog. No, he just has crap ton of drive that he doesn't necessarily get the appropriate outlet for. Fully my fault. I don't have the time to get him on birds. I do my best with the enrichment that I can give him in my home. We've upped his exercise. We're thinking of sending him out to a bird dog trainer to get some skills on him get him on birds. But we often mistake drive for anxiety and anxiety for drive, because everybody wants a drivey dog. So like, I will go into a home and they'll be like, oh my God, this dog has so much drive, or this dog has so much anxiety. And then I'll flip it on them and I'll be like, actually, that's an anxious dog. That's a dog that can't ever settle, because even a drivey dog, even a Belgian Malinois, should be able to turn off in its crate, in its home. You should be able to give it an off switch.
Sure.
If you're looking at like Edmund, who maybe has a little bit of drive bleed, that is bleeding into a little bit of anxiety, for him, I'm seeing some OCD tendencies. So he could be bleeding to anxiety. And that happens because I'm not giving him enough of an outlet. I'm not using his drive appropriately. And that's where we can mismatch in pet parent homes.
Okay. So basically, like if you think of, the families can hold a certain bucket size of drive, that's how much they can manage. And so if your dogs have so much drive that it overflows that bucket, they're going to have problems, right?
Yep.
Just the same if you have a bird dog that really doesn't have much bird drive at all and they want to hunt it every day, that dog's not going to have enough to fill the bucket of the owners that want to use it.
And it's probably going to bleed to anxiety. Yep.
And
because we're pushing a dog outside of its comfort zone and outside of its genetic makeup that it's not able to. It's like me. If you took me right now and said, Beth, you have to go run a marathon, I would die. So that's the same, right? That's the same if you take a dog that's not super birdy and you're trying to work it every day on birds or trying to hunt it every weekend. That dog, you're going to bring that dog out and you're going to sour that dog on birds. On the flip side of that, if you have a dog that is so birdy that goes out in the yard and will point for 25 minutes, you're going to end up bleeding that into anxiety because you're not able to use it all.
Yes, that makes sense. So as long as the drives can be met, that seems to be the best solution for managers. Now, when you're looking at a situation, you're saying sometimes separation anxiety, we consider it drive. How do you distinguish that when you meet a new dog? Like, how do you say this dog is drive or this is like a genetic anxiety?
Sure. It can be tricky, but normally it's kind of the behavior pattern that the dog is setting up. So I'll sometimes do consults and they'll be like, my dog has severe separation anxiety. And I'll be like, no, it's confinement anxiety. Like, because I can look at what the behaviors of what the dog is doing. So like for Edmund, putting him in a crate, scream. I mean, it is the worst scream bark you have ever heard in your life. Panting, drooling, spinning, soiling, stigging. That is not just I'm uncomfortable in here. This is I am panic. If you're seeing behaviors that you can't calm, so if you're seeing, like if you ask him to do a lie down and they're up and popping, so before I knew better about setters, my very first setter, my schmog, he would walk figure eights around my living room. So he would walk around my dining room table, around my coffee table, and back in a figure eight, and he'd do it for hours. I mistook that for drive. That was anxiety. That was a dog that he had no bird. He had bird and I fried him, so that was my fault. I field trialed him for the first 3 years of his life, and I burned him out. And I didn't wreck him, like I didn't use aversives on him or anything, but he was a master hunter very young in life, and I just burned him out. And so then that bled to, and I was like, oh, that's just his bird drive coming out because I'm not field trialing him anymore. No, he was just neurotic and he was anxious. And so in order to, it's like a fidget spinner. In order to get that anxiety out, he just paced in the circle for hours at a time. He was a dog that unless he was in a crate, he could not chill. So once I took him to a behavior consultant, this was the very start of my career. I got some help because as we should, because I started as a crossover, I started with prongs and e-collars and choke chains and aversives. That's where I started my career. Then I got my education, and then I worked under some phenomenal trainers and behavior consultants, and I learned better. And then once you know better, you do better. And so at about 6 years of life, I realized I was failing him and that I needed to put something better in place for him. And so I gave him very structured timeouts. And if he started to pace, he went in his crate. And he was the type of dog that loved his crate. So we go in his crate and sleep. Perfectly fine. But he could not sleep out of his crate until he was about 10 years old. And he was like, oh, now I can chill out in real life because his anxiety bled over. So we're looking at those types of behaviors. Are we pacing neurotically? Are we super destructive whenever mom or dad leave? And it's not just puppy behavior, because like Edmund lives downstairs in our foyer and has never destroyed anything. He's torn up one bed, but he has not chewed on the wall. He has not eaten through drywall. He has not ripped anything down. He has not chewed, been destructive, right?
Right.
So when we're looking for separation related behaviors, we're looking for, are they screaming? Are they vocalizing to the point of distress? Are they soiling? Are they pacing? Are they drooling? Are they panting? Are they lip licking? Are they spinning in circles? Are they going through windows? Are they tearing things down? My senior setter, I got her about 2 years ago. Our fourth day having her, I have cameras in my home. I asked all the right questions when I got her from the foster. And I said, did she have any separation related behaviors or anything you need to know about? Nope, she's fine. Get her home, she promptly tries to kill my tiny dog, which they told me she was fine with all sizes of dogs. She's fine with her now, but I was like, okay, strike one. And then the second one was about 4 days later. I have cameras in my home. We leave, and I turn the camera on, and we're pulling out of our driveway, and she is just full on panicking. And I was like, hey, we need to go back. And my husband was like, oh, just give her a minute. And I'm like, no, she's full on panicking. And so we got to the stoplight, and he went to turn around, and I spewed a profanity as I watched her go through a window. And I was like, oh, we need to get back. I was on the way to a client. Unfortunately, my husband's a retired firefighter, and we have a full fire hydrant in front of that window. And so she was stuck in the window between the fire hydrant and the wall in the window, panicking, because of course she is, because she's trying to get out of the house and she's panicked. So that's extreme. And that is why I got certified in separation anxiety, is because of her, because I was like, I know enough, but I don't know enough to really resolve this. And now 2 years later, it's resolved. She can be by herself we leave them 4 to 6 hours max. But, you know, it takes slow, systematic desensitization. So there are many ways. There are two different kind of thought processes with separation anxiety. The one side is correct the behavior. If you correct the behavior, the emotion will follow. Simply not true. So if I put you in a room with 1,000 spiders, Julie, and just lock you in there, right?
I got goosebumps.
You're like, whoa! You're like, I saw you look around like, wait, is this happening? Are spiders dropping in as we're talking? Yes. And you start screaming.
Yeah.
And the only time I let you out is when you have stopped screaming. Has that changed your emotion about the spiders, or just your behavior related to the spiders?
Yeah, it makes me not like you too much. But yes, no, it hasn't changed anything with the spiders.
Right. So nothing has changed about the spiders, except you've learned, oh, if I shut up, I get let out. Yeah. And then if I put you back in, you may not vocalize, but you're gonna shake, and you're going to show outward emotion about that behavior. Right. So like I have a client right now that got an impact crate because the dog was breaking out of every other crate. And every time they come home, the dog is just soaked in drool because it's learned to stop vocalizing. Yeah. It has learned to stop trying to get out because it can't, because it's now in this metal box that is just metal with small holes in it. And it has learned that if it just gives up, he'll eventually be let out. All that is learned helplessness. We have not changed anything about how the dog is feeling being left alone. Gotcha. So if we e-color stim that in the box, not changing any of the emotion, all it's doing is it's changing the behavior, and the emotion is still there. We need to.
What happens?
Go ahead.
Well, what happens when? So, because a lot of people will be like, well, that's good. I didn't want the dog to bark anymore. Now it doesn't bark. So it's problem solved. So why is that a problem? Why, if we don't change the emotion, why is that a problem?
Because it can escalate, and then that behavior can start to move into other things. So you've just taken and you have essentially suppressed the separation anxiety. It's going to come out, and it's going to come out somewhere else. It could start coming out as aggression. It could start coming out as resource guarding. It could start coming out as reactivity. Usually when we have separation anxiety, our dogs have multiple issues, what we as professionals call comorbidities. But so you will see it come out. So if your dog has some confinement anxiety and some separation anxiety and also reactivity, that reactivity is going to go through the roof because that behavior has to go that emotion has to go somewhere. So it's just like us, right? So if we've all had traumatic events in our lives, and you can put a lid on that box, right? But does that lid always stay closed? No. It's gonna come out. And I think of it like an abusive marriage. You know, you kind of take it day after day after day after day after day, but then there's always that breaking point. And that's what's gonna happen. One day you're gonna go to put that dog in the crate and he's gonna whirl on you and bite you because he's gonna be like, every time I'm in this crate, I get smashed and I don't like it. And so he's gonna whirl on you and bite you, or he's gonna plain refuse to go in that crate. Or he's gonna start soiling in the crate. So then are we going to smash the dog for soiling in the crate? Like, when do we draw a line of worrying about the dog's mental health? They're sentient beings. They have feelings. You can, if a dog didn't have feelings, it wouldn't scream when we hit it. Right? So dogs have feelings. Dogs have emotions. So why not address and treat those emotions? Because also, when we suppress a behavior, it doesn't hold. It's going to hold for a certain amount of time, but it's eventually it's just going to fail. And if you take that e-collar off, the behavior's coming right back.
No, that makes so much sense. And then it becomes learned for the behavior only when the e-collar's on, or only in this situation. I've seen that so many times with my dogs, with people. No, that's so helpful. So helpful. As breeders, what do you, I mean, from a trainer's perspective, what do you think breeders could do better to set their owners up for success?
Yeah, making sure that the owners know what they're getting. You know, making sure that we're just not selling a puppy to sell a puppy, and that we are telling the breeders, like when I spoke to my breeder and she was honest, she's like, he's going to be a very forward, challenging, tough dog. Where she could have just said, isn't he gorgeous? He's going to be so beautiful and he's going to be the perfect match for you and he's going to be everything you want him to be. Instead, when I said what I wanted, she gave me that, and she told me that was what he was going to be. If she would have sold me a different bill of goods and been like, oh, no, Edmund is going to be so chill, he's going to be so relaxed, he's going to be just a couch potato, I would be mad. I would be like, but that's not what I asked for. And I understand it's up to me to also create what I've asked for. But I wasn't mad when he had big feelings from the start because I knew he was a dog with big feelings. Whereas the average pet parent is going to be really irritated when they get a dog with big feelings, and that's not what they wanted.
That makes sense. Yep. And so thinking back with that, so as long as we set them up, maybe give them some options too for outlets on how to manage the drive. You know, because dove season is only so many months out of the year, right? So it's not like we can dove hunt our bird dogs every day. So we need something else to entertain them within that interim. And so maybe we need to become specialists on what entertains our dogs' drives when they can't do them as they were bred to do. Right.
And making sure that we're, giving them tools and outlets to set them up for success, using Enrichment for the Real World by Allie Bender and Emily Strong, two amazing women that wrote this book. And this book is it's a really great book. It puts you into the human element. It puts you into instinctual behaviors and physical exercise and things, what can we do, independence and mental stimulation and social interactions. It's a really lovely book. And you can set up, there's a chart in the back where you can make your own enrichment plan. I do enrichment plans too for clients if they'd like. So I can kind of narrow down what your dog's behaviors are, what your dog's challenges are, your dog's breeds, and tell you, okay, your dog needs a herding ball, your dog needs nose work, your dog needs decompression walks, your dog needs whatever. I think providing an enrichment list is really helpful. Most people I find, like I went into a home the other day and they had like 2 toys and I was like, no, you need like 50. Like you need enough for your puppy to be like, and maybe I'm being a little exaggerating there, but like I have 20 lick-it mats because I have 5 dogs. So if I give 5 lick-it mats out today and I don't immediately refill those 5 lick-it mats today, I still have 15 more lick-it mats that will give me at least 3 more days. So then I can refill them, in a couple of days. But I always have lick-it mats filled. I always have a couple of Kongs filled. I always have duck heads, duck feet, snouts, things for my dogs to do when they're starting to lose their mind. Like I was on a Zoom call with Trish McMillan and Matt Beisner yesterday, and Edmund was standing right here puffing his cheeks at me, and I was like, get me a duck head. And so I gave him a duck head, and he went and just ate his duck head, and then I looked over and he was napping. He was like, okay. And was that reinforcing the behavior? Maybe, but it gave him something. He was bored. He's a 11-month-old field-bred Llewellyn English setter that wants things to do. So it was either destroy my pillows while I'm on a Zoom call or have a duck head.
Yeah.
So, and often we don't do enough chewing. Lots of chewing.
Okay. Now, I had a question from one of our listeners, and she had asked, she says, her dog seems to have major separation anxiety when she's, if she can see her and when she's not around, like I can see you, but I can't be with you. And that's a common thing in breeding. If we have our dogs in a kennel or something like that outside, we need to have them separated. We can't always have them together, breeding, everything. You kind of explained what you did to help manage things with your husband, but what if can we do work on that by ourselves, or do we always need a second person? How do we work with that?
No, and that to me sounds like either FOMO or hyper attachment. So I would want to know more, so if the dog, and if your listener wants to send me a DM, I'd be happy to chat with them. But I'd want to know what is the dog doing when you're gone? Like if you're out of sight, is the dog soiling, vocalizing, destroying? Are we crating? If we're putting the dog in a crate or behind a pen and the dog's freaking out, let's try getting him out of the crate or out of the pen and see what happens. If it's FOMO, I would start with a food toy. So a lick-it mat, a Kong, a Topple, a snuffle mat, something like that, and see if we can get them distracted while we're just stepping out for a second or so and then stepping back in. If it is true separation anxiety, I don't like to use food with it because food can do 2 things. One, they can get down into the toy. Mom's walking out, they get down into the toy and they're like, nom, 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 this is the best thing ever, I love this. And then look up and go, oh God, Mom left, and then panic. And then the panic is worse than if we would just started with a desensitization program. And it can poison food. So the Kong can be a leaving cue. So it could be, okay, I'm gonna leave now, Fluffy. And we set the Kong down, they go, Kong's me, you're leaving. What the hell? And then they start panicking.
Gotcha.
Really real relaxation also works very nicely. So in combination with Dr. Karen Overall's relaxation protocol. So how I start some of my separation anxiety clients or my FOMOs is I'll teach them a good place cue, get them on a place, get them relaxing, and then walk a few feet away, come back, feed. Walk a few feet away, come back, feed. Walk a few feet away, come back, feed. And then walk around the corner, come back, feed. Walk around the corner, come back, feed. Now, it may take you a week to get 2 steps away, and then a week to get 5 steps away, and then a week to get around the corner. But we often move too fast, just generally, and especially with our dogs. We're like, well, we've done it 6 times. Why don't you know it?
Right. That's why people go to therapy for years, right?
Yes, so, exactly. Exactly. I equate dog training to weight loss.
Okay.
It cannot, as much as I would like to, I am not going to be the size of Heidi Klum by October 1st, as much as I would like that. What is today? Today is the 13th. Yeah, there's no way by October 13th that I'm going to be the size of Heidi Klum as much as I want it. So I could say by October 13th, I'm going to be 112 pounds. That is unrealistic. It's not going to happen. I'm going to stress myself out trying to get there. I'm going to ruin my body trying to get there. And I'm going to ruin my own mental health trying to get there if I try to lose over 100 pounds in a month. It's just not going to work. But with dogs, we have a very unrealistic expectation of that we should be able to change this behavior overnight.
Sure.
And especially if they're 7, 8, 9 years old, they've been rehearsing this behavior for a very long time. It's just like weight loss. It's going to take time to get that behavior change. And true behavior change comes with emotion change. So you can't make a true behavior change without changing the emotion behind it.
That makes so much sense. Well, for a last question, if you could change anything in dog culture, what would you change?
I would erase dominance and alpha theory. That would be what I would change.
Without a doubt.
Zap that out of everybody's minds and be like, let's just start at a neutral playing field. I think, yes, I am science-based, evidence-based, positive reinforcement. But I think they're, the good balance trainers that use tools last.
Yeah.
I have some really good friends that are really good ethical balance trainers. I think as long as we're coming together at the best need of our dogs, and we're ignoring the bad on my side and the bad on their side, and we're just moving together, I think we all just need to move together for the good of the dog, and just let the myth go across the board.
Perfect. I love that. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
They can find me at Rehab Your Rescue on Instagram and Facebook. And my email is hello@rehabyourrescue.com. And my website is rehabyourrescue.com.
Perfect. I will put all of those in the show notes. So thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Beth. It's so good to see you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Julie. Bye-bye.